Good morning, and thank you for joining me on Strabismus to Stereopsis. This channel is all about strabismus and amblyopia or lazy eye and what I've gone through in my life, dealing with those conditions and how I've overcome them and learned to live with them and actually use both of my eyes together to have amazing depth perception. This has been life-changing, and I want to share that with the world. Strabismus affects 3 to 5% of the population. So this isn't just some small percentage of people that are affected by this condition. Today, I want to talk about 8 myths about strabismus and lazy eye that you have probably heard and might even believe, and I want to debunk those myths. Before we jump into that, I want to make sure you know about what I have to offer. If you go over to learn.strabismussolutions.com, I have a lot of resources some of them are free. You can learn about how your eyes are working together or not, help decide between surgery and vision therapy. There's also some guides about how to eat to help your vision reach its fullest. And then you can also check out my course, which is phenomenal. It's about mastering peripheral vision, which is the key skill that has helped me come as far as I've come. And you can also book a consultation with me. So all of that's available over at learn.strabismussolutions.com. Okay. Now with that out of the way, let's jump into 8 myths about strabismus and lazy eye. So the first myth that we need to debunk is that they're the same thing. Strabismus is when your eyes are not pointing in the same direction. And the slang would probably be that that's a lazy eye. A lot of times, I know I always thought I had a lazy eye, but technically when your eyes are turning, that's actually called strabismus. Lazy eye actually refers to amblyopia, and amblyopia is when, even with your best corrected glasses, one or both eyes cannot see clearly. So that means that I put on my prescription glasses and still it's blurry out of one eye. And this happens a lot of times, they go hand in hand. Strabismus and amblyopia, eye turn, lazy eye, all of these things can be intermixed, but they are not the same thing. Okay, so that's our first myth or misconception. Second myth is that patching fixes an eye turn. There maybe are some cases where it can help along the way if you're strengthening a weak eye, but if you are an adult and one eye is out here and one eye is straight and you wear a patch, yes, this eye will straighten while you're wearing the patch, but as soon as you take the patch off, it'll go back. And the reason is because your brain doesn't know how to use the eyes together. And so separating the eyes and isolating them is not going to help them work together more effectively. It's actually going to make them work even less effectively together. So patching can be really beneficial for amblyopia or lazy eye, but it's not going to change strabismus. There are a few cases, I will say, when it's like a young child and one eye is really weak and you strengthen that eye and then the eyes become equal and they're able to regain stereopsis. That does happen. But as far as adults go, no, patching is not going to be this big, amazing answer. So don't torture yourself with it. I did for 6 months. It's the worst. Just don't torture yourself. I have a lot more information about that in some other videos and on my website as well, if you want to dive more into patching and what it is good and not good for. Okay, our third myth. All right, our third myth is that strabismus and amblyopia can only be fixed in young children. There's been so much debate over the brain's plasticity and is it able to relearn how to use that eye if it wasn't used in this early childhood? Can you regain stereopsis? And there's so much work out there. If you want to know more about this, you should definitely read Sue Berry's book, Fixing My Gaze. She's a neuroscientist with strabismus who actually was able to defy what science was saying and gain stereo vision when she was in her 40s. So she is the perfect case, but there's a ton of other cases exactly like hers where adults, even late into their 60s, 70s, are able to greatly improve amblyopia and fix an eye turn through a lot of different avenues. And so the idea that it can only work for children is just not true. Is it easier for kids? Definitely. Their brains are more plastic. They haven't developed horrible vision habits. There's more of a clean slate. It's still not perfect. It's still not easy, but yeah, it is easier for kids than it is for adults, but it doesn't mean it's not possible for adults. Anything's possible. Okay, number 4. This one makes me so angry. I have been told many times in office visits with an optometrist that there are no exercises to help my eyes. I noticed that my right eye was really weak. I didn't recognize that my eyes weren't working together, but I would go into the optometrist and say, hey, my eye is really weak. Are there any exercises that I can do? And they'd be like, no, there's not really any exercises. There's really nothing you can do. And I'd be like, I just feel like there should be some exercises to make my eyes stronger. And they'd be like, no. And this wasn't just one optometrist. I would say at least 4 different times I went to an optometrist's office and asked for eye exercises to strengthen my weak eye, and they told me nothing existed. So you can imagine my shock when I discovered there's an entire wing is probably not the right word, but wing of optometry dedicated to vision therapy or eye exercises. And for some reason, these optometrists and ophthalmologists didn't mention that when I specifically said, are there any eye exercises that I can do? So I don't understand why they are acting like there aren't eye exercises, because there are thousands of them, right? You don't know necessarily which one's going to work for you, but they are there and they exist. So that myth, I don't know where that myth came from or how it took me so long to discover that it wasn't true, but there you go. Hopefully you don't have to wait as long as I did. All right. Number 5 and number 6 kind of go together for these myths. Number 5 is that this is only a muscle problem. And I'm talking more about strabismus now. When your eyes are not pointing in the same direction, a lot of times people will say it's a muscle problem and we need to cut the muscles and reattach the muscles so that they're straight. Kind of like if you've got a muscle problem in your leg and you do a surgery to reattach the muscles in the proper place, and then your leg can work better, okay? There are definitely cases of strabismus where there is a muscle problem, where maybe you have a nerve palsy or something like that, where the muscles can't work, and maybe you've had this eye position for so long that muscles have weakened, and there are some muscle imbalances. But to say that it's only a muscle problem is it's just not true. That is a huge misconception. And so that can lead to a lot of disappointment when people get surgery and it doesn't fix their problem, because it's not just a muscle problem. There's so much more to it. And that takes us right into number 6, that surgery is the only answer. And that is a myth. There are so many cases of strabismus that can be fixed through vision therapy or even with glasses. Surgery is not the only way to fix an eye turn. A lot of people are really afraid of surgery, so they're not even willing to investigate fixing strabismus. They just decide, I'm going to just live with this for the rest of my life. But you should know there are so many other solutions and possible things to try before going the route of surgery. So number 7 is kind of the flip side of those. Is it only a brain problem? So if it's not a muscle problem, it's not always a muscle problem, then what is it? And that is a brain problem. Your brain's job with your vision is to take what both eyes are seeing, and then they do all these math calculations. I'm a math teacher, so that's how I think of it. The brain kind of does all the math and spits out a stereo image if both eyes are working together. And it's trying to make sense of the light that is coming into your eyes, right? The pictures that your eyes are seeing. And with strabismus and amblyopia, there's some disconnect between your eyes and your brain, what your brain's telling you, what your eyes are telling your brain. There's some disconnect. And part of that might be because your eyes aren't pointing in the same direction. It might be that you've got the amblyopia and what your eyes are seeing isn't the same, but it's coming from your brain, right? Yes, there might be a muscle, something going on with the muscle, but there's also something going on with the brain. And so the idea, is it only a brain problem? No, not always. Definitely there's a part that's the brain. There's also a part that is muscle. And so you have to recognize that strabismus isn't just either or. It's not a brain problem or a muscle problem. It's some combination, and sometimes it's mostly brain with a little muscle, and sometimes it's mostly muscle with a little brain. But in every case, there's going to be some combination going on. The last myth, number 8, is that vision therapy is the only answer. This one pains me a little bit to say, because part of me believes this myth, that vision therapy is the answer. But the key word there is that it's the only answer. And that's not true. Sometimes vision therapy isn't going to work for strabismus. And sometimes you're going to need to combine it with something else like surgery. And trying to compartmentalize and say it's only a vision therapy problem, it's only a surgical problem. That's just going to make it harder to find a solution, because it's a combination. There might be some muscle problem, there might be some brain problem, you might need some surgery, you might need some vision therapy. Combining all of this is what's going to make it magical. And I think this is why we have such a hard time as people with strabismus, because we go to an ophthalmologist and they say it is a muscle problem, you need surgery. And then you go to vision therapy and they say it is a brain problem, you need vision therapy. And they don't work together, and they do this always and never and only. And so it makes it harder to find a solution. But I think if we can dispel these myths and recognize this is a problem with a lot of different, there's a lot of gray area, there's a lot of experimentation, it's like an art. And so when you hear these myths, don't be discouraged. Just know, like, okay, that's your opinion, but I know that there are some other solutions. So hopefully this can kind of help clear up some misconceptions. If you have any questions, you can put them down in the comments and I will make sure to get back to you. And you can also connect with me over at learn.strabismussolutions.com. So hope you have a fabulous day, and we'll see you next week.